and the blood of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, at whose command we celebrate this mystery. But on the night he was betrayed, he himself
Branner, director of the School of Theater here at George Mason University. I use he, him pronouns, and it's really a pleasure to welcome you to the first of this semester's conversation with queer artists engaged in the creation of more inclusive and anti-racist theater. I'm particularly excited to speak with Sharon Bridgforth, not only because she's a brilliant theater maker, but because she's my home sister girl, whom I've had the pleasure of knowing and collaborating with for several decades now. A few housekeeping items before we begin. The conversation will be conducted in two parts. During the first 40 minutes or so, I'll engage in direct conversation with our guest artist. And during this section, we ask that you keep all cameras turned off and mics muted. For optimal viewing, please keep your cameras on speaker view. Then about 40 minutes later, we'll open up for Q&A, at which point you're welcome to turn your cameras back on, remain muted until you speak. And for part two, we invite you to shift to gallery view. As you just heard, the conversation is being recorded. The chat is being monitored by our program manager, Nick Horner. Feel free to post questions and or comments there as well. And then finally, let us remember to remain respectful, open, and growth-centered as a community, even as we engage with sensitive and or challenging topics. At the place George Mason University occupies, we give greetings and thanksgivings to the Diag ancestors, the enslaved and rightfully freed African Americans, and the Manahoic, Rappahannock, Pamunkey, Mattaponi, Upper Mattaponi, Chickahominy, Eastern Chickahominy, Nonsmoot, Manikin, Potawatomi, Nottoway, and Piscataway tribes who lovingly stewarded these lands past, present, and future. I invite you to acknowledge the indigenous stewards of the land wherever you are by writing their names in the chat. So, a 2022 winner of Yale's Wyndham Campbell Prize in Drama, Sharon Bridgforth is also the 2020-2023 Playwright Center core member, the 2022 to 23 McKnight National Fellow, and a New Dramatist alum. She has received support from the Doris Duke Performing Artist Award, Creative Capital, the MAP Fund, the National Performance Network, a MAP Fund scaffolding for practicing artist coach. Her work is featured in volume 110, number 4, winter 2022 of the Yale Review, Teaching Black, the Craft of Teaching on Black Life and Literature, Mouths of Rain, an anthology of Black lesbian thought, Feminist Studies, volume 48, number 1, honoring 40 years of This Bridge Called My Back, and But Some of Us Are Brave. Sharon's new book, Bull, Jean, and Them, They Back, features 2 performance novels that will be produced by Pillsbury House and Theater in Minneapolis, 2022 and 2023. And Sharon's That Black Mermaid Man Lady, the show, is streaming on the Twin Cities PBS platform. She has served as a dramaturg for the Urban Bush Women Choreographic Center, Initiative's Choreographic Fellowship Program, and was writer, dramaturg, and voice-over performer for Ananya Chatterjee's Dance Theater's Das Tak, I Wish You Me. Please join me in welcoming the incomparable Sharon Bridgforth to the virtual stage.
Thank you so much. I'm grinning so much just to be here with you. I'm so grateful grateful for your longtime support and for the opportunity to be in community with you here. And just hearing that bio, it just takes me back to a deep knowing of how supported I've been, how
Yeah.
so many people lifted me
Yes.
to this
Yes.
moment. And so my heart is just wide open.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And in reading that, I'm also reminded of all the artists that you've impacted, you know, during all the residencies, the workshops. So really an honor to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as I was saying, full disclosure, I have had the amazing privilege of performing 3 of Sharon's performance works: Blood Pudding, Conflama, River Sea, all the way from Austin to Boston.
Yes.
And we've really been in conversation about creating space for BIPOC voices in the American theater for 3 decades.
Yeah.
So I want to start by asking you, as I ask all the artists in the series, about your background, because I think all of our work is informed by culture, identity, history. I'm always curious about how life experience informs creative practice. So tell us a bit about the communities that you've inhabited, how they may have influenced, grounded, nourished, or challenged you, how those communities and experiences inform the stories you tell.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, we come from the same sky, South Central LA. I was raised by folks that migrated from the South looking for a better life. On my mom's side, they're from Mississippi, Arkansas, and Memphis. I had a deep relationship with Memphis because I got sent back home a lot growing up. On my dad and my stepmom's side, they're from New Orleans. And that part of me, I kind of got to know later in my life.
Okay.
I was raised by my mom who was a single parent for most of my life. But them New Orleans people, they were in my spirit haunting me. So I knew so many things and I didn't know why I knew them until I got hooked into that in my physical body. But that's a whole nother story. But
yes.
So I was raised by a bunch, like really a community of fierce, fine, fabulous, self-determining, single Black women from the South. And most of them felt a sense of freedom in this place where their family wasn't. And I think a deep sense of hardship because their family wasn't here and most of them were single parents. And so I think early on, I was just nosy. And I was also from the very beginning in love with women and just had no language for that. So I would just like really, I just loved watching them. And so at the party, because in those days, there were parties every Saturday. And then they listened to church on Sunday on the radio.
It was all church, Sharon. Now we understand it was all church.
It was all church, and that is the truth.
Yes.
And then in Memphis, where I actually started school. That 2 of my great aunts were teachers, and they started me in school early. So I started a year early, and they instilled in me a love of reading and the importance of education, and also, again, being a nosy child and in love with my elders. I just watched them a lot. So later in life, when I had no language for this until much later, but basically being a queer gendered lover of women with no language and no obvious way to see my insides reflected outside of me, I started writing. So writing was a natural impulse for me. And I would say I was probably about 12 or 13. And so,
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I kept the work in suitcases and I didn't actually share it until I was about 30, until I moved to Austin, Texas.
Wow.
And so part of the beauty of that, even though it took me 10 years, but I did get a BA from Cal State LA in a special major that the dean helped me create, where I took every single writing class the school offered.
Wow.
But what they were saying was writing was not how I knew stories to be. Like
Mhm.
I didn't feel that the way that I knew stories to be, which were how my family told stories, how
Right,
stories were alive and vibrant,
right.
how there was always a cacophony of many things happening at the same time, how
Mhm,
prayer and crying and heartbreak and power was always present, how
mhm.
dancing and food and gathering was medicine. I
Right.
didn't see that reflected in what they were offering as models. So I
Right.
kind of just like kept my work to myself, finally got that degree and just tucked it away.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about that is it left me to my own imagination. And in my heart, I was simply trying to tell stories as good as my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I understood that Black language is music and that there was a great self-determining, transgressive power in the joy that we created together.
Yes.
And so I think that shaped not only my writing, but what I thought was possible later in bringing the writing to life live.
Yeah.
And it was also a model for me personally to aspire to.
Mm. Was your
And
first?
I do have to say, Homo Afro Homos later
Oh,
on, this was before I got to Austin, so I hadn't shared my work,
yeah.
which you were in, and I
Yes.
saw at La Pena in Berkeley in the
Oh,
70s at some point,
oh, wow.
was a huge, had huge impact on me.
Mm.
Huge. Like it, I sat there and I had it was for Color Girls, which I saw in San Francisco. I saw the original touring version, which I
Yes.
do think, I'm pretty sure Robbie McCulley was in it.
I'm pretty sure she
Uh,
was. I think I saw that same production.
yeah, right?
ACT. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So those two, that was the only theater I had seen.
Yeah.
And those two pieces helped me to root in what I believed was important and
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
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 So
That's-
later when I got to work with you, it was just like my mind was blown. I was like,
What?
life is good, y'all. Life is good, y'all.
Well, I've often told the story how that experience of embodying blood pudding was really, really critical to my own evolution as a theater maker, as an actor, because for the first time, and I had been doing work for a while, even with Pomo Afro Homos, but for the first time, I too heard the stories I heard as a child and how we were telling them,
Yeah.
with everybody talking at the same time and how
Yeah.
everything was
Yeah.
music, everything was prayer, everything was
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank
Um,
you.
I think, like the institutions of higher learning everywhere, George Mason University is in the throes of very necessary, sometimes difficult conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this guest artist series really grew out of a desire to further that conversation by developing more awareness of the ways in which underrepresentation of marginalized voices persist in the American theater. Um, Becoming more familiar with artists, scholars of color, engaged in conversations for radical change and racial justice, and cultivating more comfort and proficiency when we're talking about race, power, and privilege, all right? Because it ain't going away. Um, not to no time soon. Um,
Yeah.
so if we can unpack that term a bit, the idea of anti-racist theater. But when I talk about anti-racist theater, I'm talking about an inclusive theater that not only rectifies racial disparities, but bolsters and centers the stories of women, members of the queer community, disabled folk, other marginalized identities. For some of us, our identities are inextricable. And that's a long-winded way of saying, my next question is, how have your identities informed the stories you tell, particularly your experience as a member of the LGBTQ plus community?
Thank you. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing.
Mm,
I think this is timely and critical.
Mhm. Thank you.
I really rooted into writing as a way to heal my own self and as a way to understand who I was and who I came from and what the context of our lives were. So being so deeply rooted in that, and because, you know, I am an artist shaping work in collaboration as an offering for communities and as a way of being in service. I have also done an incredible amount of research for each thing that I write. And so it starts deep inside of me and becomes itself because it is tended. And not only by me, but by other people, by collaborators, and by how the audience offers itself. And so I am looking at Black brilliance as the architecture for healing, transformation, change, and elevation. So I think of, for instance, those parties in South Central LA, they on Saturdays, they knew that there was power in gathering. They brought all of who they were. And it was a hot mess up in there sometimes, you know? They loved hard. There was food. Like I said, there was prayers. There was a sense that we will care for each other. And there was transgression inside of that. And these were working class Black people, like many of them single women, parents. And so I did, before I began working as a self-employed artist, my day job was as a community activist. So I started that work at Planned Parenthood as an intake worker in Santa Monica, California. And then I worked with Monique Mayo. We worked there at the same place. And Monique moved, and her partner at the time moved to Austin. And I saw them like chill out. They bought a house. And I was like, what the heck is going on in Austin, Texas? And I literally just moved. I had never been to Texas. And in Austin, my job that I landed into was managing syphilis cases for the health department. And so my job was when people tested positive for syphilis, to find out who they had sex with and then anonymously get these people to come in and get tested. That put me inside of being a part of the first wave of HIV outreach workers, activists, early intervention specialists, and like we did street testing and stuff like that in Austin in those days. And so I heard stories. I heard so many stories, and there were a few things that were very clear to me that had deep impact on me. One, the system was not serving us. It was not serving us. Two, everybody was having sex with everybody. And the more the people tried to hide that, the sicker they were in their behaviors and in their physical bodies. And three, there were always some old, as my grandmother would call them, bulldaggers, that we would get sent to go find people. Oh, go to Miss So-and-so. She lived next to the church with Miss So-and-so, and she'll tell you where to find so-and-so. So I'm like, what the hex? Why didn't I know about Miss So-and-so long time ago? So all of that freed me to be more determined to be myself, to figure out how to be healthy, to love fiercely. And also it rooted me in my writing voice. So around the same time, most of my elders, older than my mom, had passed, and I just wanted to hear their voices. So I started writing the Bull Jean stories, which is in a blues voice, which is my heart voice. And I was thinking, because I had heard about all these gatekeepers who were lesbians, Black lesbians in the Austin community, I was like, and I did a whole lot of research. I was like, oh, we have been part of the community and pillars for forever in lots of different ways. So what if Bull Jean was part of the community and not separate from it, with her Black, Southern, rural butch self. And focusing in that way freed me in so many ways. And it became clear to me, one, that I could not keep having my day job and grow as a writer. And two, that my greatest service, the thing that I could offer the most wholeheartedly and with the most impact for myself in the process, was to be an artist.
Yeah.
So thank God I had people like Lori Carlos and Robbie McCulley and you and Daniel Alexander Jones and Dr. Omiyoshun Joniel Jones and Raul Salinas and Marsha Ann Gomez and Ana Cisnet. And Maria Limon. I had so many people that loved me, held me up, and kind of pushed me forward. Urban Bushwomen, Jawale Willa Jo Zolar, like so many examples, and like what we would call mentorship.
Yes.
But it was old-fashioned apprenticeship. You just got up in there and you did it.
You just got up in there and you did it. You sat at their feet. Sometimes you got a cup of coffee, whatever you needed to do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, Sharon. Just to hear about your trajectory, because I think I see some of my students too in the conversation today, but we just read Conflama.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And I was reminded of, well, three things really stuck out to me. One is that you and I share this lineage. We both grew up in South Central, sort of products of the Black migration from the South, right?
Yes.
My parents as well. So I was reminded of that. And I was reminded of the movement across, I'm going to say there weren't really boundaries, but neighborhoods.
Yes.
Right? And how fluid that became in a way in LA, because LA in many ways probably still is. I haven't been there in a while, but probably still is very segregated in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the work, Conflama is performance ritual that Sharon wrote 2002, something like that. Yeah. But it's sort of inspired by her bus rides as a young girl across communities in LA. And I shared those bus rides. So many of those landmarks I remembered. So it was like going home for me to read that play. Even, you even got the pastrami joint on West Adams in there. And I said, what?
You know it. You know it.
What? Yes. So that was exciting. And then I was reminded of how, well, singular your voice is in a way as a writer. I mean, I know you talk about having come up through the academy, probably not finding a lot of voices that sort of represented or reflected, the voices that you were trying to write through. But you figured it out, and now you're doing it for other people. So
thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you. I appreciate
it is like reading jazz music in a lot of ways. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
You touched on Lori Carlos and Robbie McCulley. I wonder if you could share a specific moment with either or both of them that was really impactful in your development as an artist and or a person, really.
Yes. Yeah. That makes me so happy to share. I will. And I also, and this is kind of context for what I'm about to share, because I feel like they come from this too, and even more so than me. But thinking about diversity and inclusion and all that, we just lived it. So I was in people's homes that were from all over the world, because I went to high school with them. So their families would have me over. You know what I'm saying? I didn't even necessarily people weren't necessarily speaking the same language, but we understood each other.
You understood each other, right?
We were together and we were committed to each other, and we were following like relationships and love and building together community without having any fancy words for it.
Yeah.
So, and again, sometimes it was a mess, but we stayed in it. And I think the activists that in Austin trained me, it was a similar thing. They would just snatch you up, you get thrown. I got thrown into the sweats by Cynthia Pettis and Marsha Ann Gomez. I don't know what the heck was going on. They loved me. And so they brought me into their sacred space.
Yeah.
And they kept bringing me back, and something deep in me healed. And I could be myself fully and completely as I was, and be with them and walk with them. And we were very different. Lori, Carlos, and Robbie McCulley, I feel like came from the same kind of way of loving and growing and making change. And, you know, they are the ones that broke the ground. Any ground that I'm standing in, they broke that ground. But two of my favorite stories when I think of them, Lori Carlos was directing Blood Pudding, which you were in, and Zell Miller III was in it, and it was his first time working with Lori. And you know, Lori used to, and especially for that show, she would create these, I call them moving images. So you all had gestures. There was like singing. You had to, like, there were no walls between you and the audience. You had each other that you had to really engage with. There was a lot of stuff going on. And there was this series of gestures that Zell wasn't getting. And on the break, Lori turned to me and she said, you know, I go into their bodies and I find the blocks and I give those blocks back to them as gestures. And then she just kind of looked off in the space, just shaking her head. And so
you do.
what you gonna do? What you right? And so rehearsal it came back, and Zell wasn't able to get the thing. And she just suddenly, and she had been so sweet and kind and patient, she suddenly yelled, and I'm about to cuss, so feel free to bleep me. She said, "Dance from your pussy." And he got it.
He got it. Yes.
He got it. And he ain't been the same since.
Elena said,
he got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then Robbie McCulley and I were at Elmo, Terry Morgan, Black Lavender Experience at Brown University. And we were waiting for our little ride from the hotel to the theater. Robbie was directing Conforma, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this was a while ago. I was complaining. I was so frustrated. I had applied for this and that, and I wasn't getting it. And I thought they was out to get us. And who's they? I don't know. But anyway, I was very upset.
Whoever they were out to get you.
Whoever they were, you know? And Robbie, who was so fierce and so like in the middle of direct action through theater. And she was always also very sweet and loving at the same time. Robbie looked at me and she said, "Lay your weapons down." And she walked away. And I said, I've been thinking about that ever since.
Okay.
So for her, the fierce warrior, to tell me to lay my weapons down, I think the thing that I came to was I was in the way.
Yeah.
It was me.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I changed how I engaged in everything, and it shifted everything for me.
Yeah. As you said, you follow love now. So
follow love, baby.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah. I never had the opportunity to work with Robbie, but as you know, we hung out socially, so I can see her, and she had a quiet way of doing it. Whereas Lori would slap you upside the head.
Yeah.
Robbie was quiet in hers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Lori would tear the whole house down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Robbie would just be there breathing.
So I've been grappling with this question for a minute. Do you think that there is a queer aesthetic do you think we have queer ancestors who might have given us that aesthetic or forged the way with that aesthetic?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think for people of African descent who are queer and who are making live performance, there are not straight lines, it's circles. So people like Essex Hempfield, people, so it's Langston Hughes,
Yeah,
who I'm gonna claim as queer, even though I don't know that he ever came out. I'm not sure, but he's my boyfriend anyway. Okay.
yes, no,
But
right.
there are so many,
I
there's a
love it.
long line.
Yeah,
And I think some of them would be more recognized in literature, some in visual arts,
yeah,
some in dance, some in theater, but definitely the circles they show themselves in all that we do,
yeah,
I think.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then I think when we take it all the way back to our roots, and I'm thinking about my family in particular, but thinking about who we come from, even in a more rooted way, that laughter, prayer, singing, dancing, gathering, food, praying, crying, people talking at the same time, like the jazz of it
Yeah, yeah.
is, and that there was so much queer, there's a hummingbird out there. So
Oh,
thank
sweet.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is also very queer and
Mhm.
very, I think, informed by our own diasporic roots.
Mhm.
So we're not,
Mhm.
as Black people, I think, there is so much queerness. So my short answer is yes.
Yes. Thank you. Do you think there's a queer aesthetic, or have you just defined it by the polyphony, the polyrhythm, is that it?
I think queer is Black, so I
Uh,
can't separate it.
got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for my own self. And I know that, queer exists all over the globe, but in the way that I'm able to speak about it, that's what I feel.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, and I know Omi talks about this in Theatrical Jazz in the book
Yes.
that she
Yes.
published. Yeah. So, and I know for people on the call, we may be mentioning a lot of folks that you're unfamiliar with. I encourage you to go find out who they are. Lori Carlos, Robbie McCulley, Essex Hemphill, Langston Hughes, if you don't know them, but some amazing work. I remember one of the things that it was George C. Wolfe, because for one time he sort of really mentored Homo Afro Homos in many ways. And we were hanging out at his house in Riverside one rainy, stormy night. And he just said very off the cuff, well, American pop culture is Black culture.
Yeah.
And I said, huh. Well, he said, think about, language, think about fashion, think about music, think about all of that stuff. And I said, So it shifted my thinking around pop culture too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just have a couple more questions before I open this up, but I wondered if you had to offer one strategy for creating a more inclusive theater, what that might be. I guess I had two questions because I have another one, but go on. Yeah.
I feel like there's multiple
Yeah.
ways that I would respond to that. Topically, I think power has to shift. So the people in power are people that value people globally and not just one kind of people and aesthetic and background and audience and experience.
Yeah.
I think that we will do it anyway.
Yeah.
And so I think showing up for, supporting, passing the word, volunteering, going and learning in person will help shake that change.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Okay.
Tell me what that question was again, because I had more to say.
No, it's
Now I
okay.
lost it.
I said if you had to offer one strategy,
Oh,
that's all right. You didn't offer us a couple, and I
well, I
think
did.
I think I agree with you because I think there's more than one way to, that horrible expression, more than one way to skin a cat. But
Yeah,
I think there are many approaches, right? It's sort
yeah,
of in the same way I think of God,
yeah.
one God, many paths
Yes, yes,
to that.
yes.
So, yeah, one strategy that, and I guess I won't qualify it by saying this could be in the theater, this could be in academia, this could be in our lives, whatever, however you
I
want
see.
to interpret that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, it's on us individually to do our own work so that we can be more present, so that we can be more mindful, so that we can be more generous and
Yeah.
kind to each other. And to me, the doing of our own work means, like Robbie was suggesting to me, get out of our own way. So know what your triggers are, know what your issues are, and tend to them so that you're not imposing them on people all the time, or on structures, or on systems, so that you can be yourself and see and welcome others to be
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
and to know that what is possible with art and art making is infinite.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enough said. Who is making art that inspires you right now? It's my last question.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so many people. So many people. I'm
So
gonna just
many
break the
people.
rules and name, Daniel Alexander Jones,
Yeah.
Sidney Haraday, Virginia Grice, Maria Ballman,
Yeah.
everything Urban Bush Women does.
Yes.
Ananya Chatterjee,
Yes.
Florinda Bryant is doing great things.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a long list. Alexis Pauline Gumbs. I'm gonna just stop there.
Okay. I'm
I
not
love
really,
her.
I know who she is. I'm not familiar with her work, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fierce.
She edited this.
Okay. Okay.
So she wouldn't, I think, fall into a quote unquote theater category,
Right.
but she has had deep impact on like me and Omi and Daniel
Yeah.
and many others.
Yeah.
Alexis DeVoe, that's another one. Oh God. Okay, I gotta stop with the names now.
But there's a lot of folk, it sounds like,
It's a
and
lot of folk.
not just people who are in the spotlight on stage, but it sounds like
Yeah.
thinkers, scholars, educators.
Yes. Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at this point, I'm going to invite everyone to shift to gallery view so we can see each other, be in community. Turn your cameras on if you feel comfortable doing so. And just remain muted until you speak. I will try to acknowledge you if you want to raise a real hand or a virtual hand, or if you want to write a question in the chat. I'll try to keep up with those as well.
And I just have to say, I see the menopausal gentleman poster in the back, Peggy Shaw. I just got to say Peggy Shaw's name.
Yes.
Woo!
Love her. Love her.
Yes.
Yes. It's good to see something. Hi, homie. Good to see you. There's Kevin. I think people are just taking it in, Sharon. I'm not sure they know what to say.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay too. Elena Velasco, good to see you. I see your hand. Acknowledge you.
Thank you. First, Sharon, thank you for, dropping the wisdom and sharing sharing so much of the legacy that you have built and those who, the community around you. And the one thing I just want to just go back to and say that it really resonates with me. In fact, I'm in the rehearsal process now in Boston as I jump back and forth between DC and Boston. And we were talking about circles. And it's this is a play that is for the Latinx community, specifically for those in the undocumented community. And when we think about diasporic communities, the circle is very important. And I always reflect back to Dr. Tanya Pettyford-Waits, who is at VCU in the Conciliation Project. And she talks about, Sankofa, like go back and get it. What was lost, stolen, and taken. And that, in our journey, as we share story, it's the life, death, and transformation. And I find that constantly in the stories that we tell from my own culture. But it takes the circle. And that's because we don't, we live without resolution. But we'll, what we can find may be revelation, but we will live without resolution. So we have to keep going and going. And so I just want to say, like, I'd love to hear more about how you see that taught now as we try to share this with this generation of students who have predominantly been taught, to be quite blunt, like white acting methods, and deconstructing stories that have been built off of this, when it's this.
Thank you so much. And you bring to heart, I have to say, Sheree Moraga's name. She has had deep impact on me, my life. She's one that claimed me early on. And yeah, her work has had deep impact in my life personally, and of course in the world. I think that the old-fashioned way of apprenticing is really needed right now. I think, like the work that you're doing, the people that get the opportunity to work with you are going to leave that process changed. I think they will impact other people. I think it'll be slow but mighty. And that's kind of the thing that I see, is that people that I mentored in the 90s are now grown folk, and they're sending me their artist children. And so unofficially, there are a lot of things that we get to do together, and sometimes officially. But I guess I feel like if they can, some of it is just for us to continue to do the work. Some of it is, I pray they find you, that more of them find you, that they find us, that we find each other, and that there be grace and goodness giving us the stamina to continue. I don't know that, and I think, and I see Omi here. Omi's my wife. Hey, Omi. And Omi also wrote the theatrical jazz book, where she, in an ethnographic way, breaks down our lineage of making art and work. But Omi was in academia, and I saw her since 1990 be the one that forced space open for us. And so I guess part of what I'm saying is I recognize that there is a toll that gets paid by you all that are making these spaces and inviting the circles. And, for some of us that are not part of institutions that are doing it, like it's labor. And so I guess I feel like all I could do is just pray. May you have everything that you need. May you be fully resourced. May you know that you're loved and held. May you have community as you do this work. And may those that are ours find us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Elena, what is the work that you're doing in Boston, and where is it?
I'm at Central Square Theater, which had combined, it was the Nora Theater and Underground Railway Theater to become one. And it's called Alma by Benjamin Bene, who is a queer Latinx playwright. And it's a two-hander. It's an undocumented mother and her daughter.
Hmm.
And the reality that how broken the system is.
Mhm.
That's how we tear them apart.
And when does it go up?
It opens on February 23rd and it will run until March 26th. I think that sounds right. Yes, it's March 26th it runs.
Okay.
I feel really blessed to be able
Yeah.
to work on this. I feel really blessed that we have a lot of connectivity around it. We have panels about, from immigration specialists, from community leaders who are going to help you identify action to take out of the experience.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm
Wonderful.
blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
For asking.
right. All right. Other questions, comments? Yes, Omi.
Hi. Oh, this is so yummy. This is so good, so good, so good, so good. I have a question for you, Sharon. Early on, you and Jola were talking about love, and the centrality, the necessity of love. Can you share with us, how do you keep that central in this moment with all that is happening, with so many reasons why love could fall away from our practice? How do you keep it central?
Thank you. That's that question lands. Oh, a pug. That's one way.
Such
Anyway,
a baby,
sorry.
your four-legged baby.
Yeah.
It's on
We
a
have a
woman.
Hi.
We have a grand doggy that's a pug, so I'm a pug lover. And hugging that pug helps, let me tell you. But yeah, I feel like it goes back to the thing of for me, starting the day with me doing my own work, my own, like whatever my morning practice is, a vat of coffee, praying, breathing, intentionally seeking inspiration so that I'm grounded. And then I feel like I learned this early on from the people that that raised me, and then the people that shaped me as an artist, intentionally minding relationships. So staying in touch with the people that love and support me and have my best interests in mind, that I love and support and trust, that I am mindfully connected with them as much as possible. And that doesn't mean that we see each other all the time or that we even talk all the time, but I am mindful in nurturing those relationships. I get a lot of inspiration from paying attention in retrospect to how my family thrived and survived, and really I'm inspired by how stubborn they were. So despite Jim Crow, despite the physical histories of trauma and danger that are in their lived experiences and in their DNA, they loved hard and they gathered and they nurtured and supported love and therefore possibility. They prayed hard, they sacrificed, and there was no evidence that things were going to be okay. And so I feel that I owe their courage, I owe them, and so I want to honor and respect and stand mindfully inside of the power that they granted me and that they prayed for me. And then E. Patrick Johnson talked to me about this a while ago, but I was in a conversation with him for my podcast series, Who Your People Is. And E. Patrick just said, when I think of the ancestors on those slave ships, and that was kind of the end of the sentence, but I received it all. It's like, we have lived through, thrived, survived, and are here despite unimaginable violence, trauma, and inhumane ways that we've been treated. This earth, we're on Kis Tonga land. Indigenous people loved and tended this land. That's why I can look out here and see these trees. So anyway, I think it is a mindful, it's interesting. Loving requires work. It ain't easy. It's easy to show up and be angry. It's easy to show up and let my rage guide my day. It is hard for me. It requires work for me to breathe in the possibility that love opens and offers. And I'm not able to do it gracefully all the time. As you know, Dr. Jones, because you live with me.
Well.
Ooh, and then just one last thing, I just see so many people doing such incredible work. And so to seek the information and the inspiration by what is being done, as opposed to always being infiltrated by what's harming.
Sharon, one of the things, and I thought of this earlier, thank you for that response, by the way. I think standing in love does take consistent, concerted effort, right? There are many distractions. There are many distractions from it. But as I listened to your biography during this conversation, the through line is really community.
Yes.
It's really community. You know, it's you being there, as you said, being mindful. Whether you were out on the street, you know, talking to people, trying to track down somebody who infected somebody else, or whether you're in the theater, right? Creating a space for these joyful stories to be shared, to be reflected. And there is an offering here that you bring to your work, because when we see ourselves reflected in your stories on stage, we see that love reflected as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I see a few of my students here, but they're being very, very reticent. Yes, they are. Yes, Onawumi. Yep. Unmute yourself so we can hear you. Yep. There we go.
I just want to say how wonderful it is, Sharon, to see you and hear you talk about your work, about your own courage to own whatever your misgivings have been, and your patience with yourself to hide your work so it wouldn't be hurt by too much influence coming before you were ready for it. The wisdom to do that. And I hope that the students who are not saying anything are acting out of that wisdom and not out of fear for what might happen if they speak and show themselves. So Omi, you know, I love you, I love you, I love you. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. I'm thankful for E. Patrick Johnson. I'm thankful for Jola. I'm a storyteller. And I'm kind of a hybrid of something that is a storyteller and a lay actor. And so the theater has now come into my work. And it is in the work that's being done in the nation by most people who are doing it sort of almost fraternally, sorority-like. It's very, what you are talking about, what Lori Carlos taught me. I it's another world.
Mhm.
So your audience is sitting, perhaps having more experience in some cases with storytellers than with actors that will be telling the truth, that will be truth tellers. That is my quest right now. How do I speak to that audience? Because they are now in a split screen in their traditional way of hearing and understanding, and then it's not even in our traditional way of saying things. So I'm not even going to call it something that is academically focused. It is just, we live in a split screen world and in split screen worlds. And we then try to label it. You know, I'm more interested right now in how to talk about bigotry from the stage. How to talk about bigotry. It is an illness that we all have. It is an illness that we all have. And I want to hear anything that anybody has to say about bigotry. If you think that you are without bigotry and you were born and raised in the United States of America, you are wrong, and you are harboring an illness. You are harboring an illness that when a Sharon Bridgforth comes forth, when a Jola Browner comes forth, and you don't understand them and they have to over-explain, you still don't get it because you haven't dealt with your own stuff. And you've got to deal with your own stuff and where it came from. And I'm saying that from a place of love. There is no indictment here. This is just a need we have to understand ourselves. You cannot go on stage. I'm a lay 86-year-old actor. And Jola Browner liberated my voice at another level by helping me write my memoir play. And it's in that liberation that I thought, because it was a multimedia, it is a multimedia piece, I thought about bigotry. And that I had bigotry, and it was for queer people. And so I wrote about it. And then I told it. And I was attacked from within the storyteller community for having done it. I'm okay with the attack, because I'm like the ancestors that we have been talking about, you've been talking about. I'm okay with the attack, because I come back and I'm coming back and I'm coming back as long as I can come back. And I can come back, I can come back, I can come back. But bigotry. Bigotry.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful and honored to be here with you, to receive your words, to know the power that you are offering out in the world, and to be in circle with you. I thank you.
Yes, thank you. I don't know that you had an opportunity to read what Eric N. wrote. He had to rush off, but he said, lay your weapons down. We don't need technologies, things to do things with things. We need a way that discovers the personal in the plural, the note that works out most happily and sweetly in harmony. He said, Sharon, you always get my leaves to uncurl in the sun. So sorry, gotta run, but we'll run farther thanks to your conversation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love Eric.
So is there a comment on bigotry? How are you all dealing with that in classrooms is bigotry focused on it, or is it just sort of there?
I think it's part of the conversation. I'll just speak for myself, and for me, it comes back to the work that Sharon and Omi have both touched upon, to look within yourself, to understand our own implicit biases, try to attend to them so that we don't project them onto others. You know what I mean? That's certainly one strategy that I've employed.
Mhm.
Yeah, me the same. Yeah. I think also for me, part of what's been so impactful in thinking about bigotry and kind of like how to heal myself through it, because is that I did grow up with people from so many different parts of the world. And so, and because I was focused on honoring my family as they were, as opposed to wishing they were something else. So I think those two things have been very, very, very helpful. And you know, doing all that work of getting out of the way helps me catch it quicker if it does show itself.
We have a comment in the chat that relates to the question of bigotry. Jeremy writes, there's a lot of bigotry towards all groups of people in theater and film. I wonder what you think about those who have disabilities like autism or dyslexia or struggle with, and in this industry, we are told to keep quiet or it will hurt us. And I think that we're told not to disclose that we may have autism or dyslexia, I think. Anyone
Yeah,
with that? Yeah.
yeah, that's a big one. I mean,
It
to
is.
me, part of it goes back to like the power systems have to change and we have to do it our damn selves.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, Jeremy, thank you for pressing that point. Actually, for me, Sharon's earlier comments embody some answers that we can take from it. And so her work embodies that as well. But again, from this lay 86-year-old from Jackson, Tennessee, 160 miles from where the Ku Klux Klan was founded, who lived the first 18 years in Jim Crow, and then moved to Illinois just far enough away from it to think that I had escaped it. But it was in the course of getting older and starting to understand through storytelling, through being in intense conversations about racism back in the 70s at college level, that was all the rage. You could go and make money to talk to white people about racism. And I went to one and I was going to make $400. And when I heard what the conversation was, I understood that the white people in that particular group, hear me now, in that particular group, they had absolved themselves and then turned themselves into victims, saying that you make me feel guilty for something I didn't do. Anytime you saw someone take a drink water from a fountain that said colored or white only, you were participating. Yeah. Anytime you had church and you didn't look around and see everybody else, you were participating. In my life, bigotry showed up because it had been taught to me in everyday life that there are people that were queer. And I believed it because I was a child. And when I grew up and found out that one of my second or third cousins had had an operation and turned himself from Michael to Michelle, I said, well, and when I looked at bigotry, that's when I knew. oh, you're infected. You think you've been infected by COVID? Huh? No, baby. And there is nothing but the truth that you have to tell yourself that is the absolute vaccine that you can get. You have to tell yourself. And you have to help your audience know that they have to tell themselves without making them feel guilty. And that is really something to try to do. So Jeremy, let's make sure, and Sharon said it early. She said everything is Black. I don't try to tease something out and think that it's something else. Whoever you are, Jeremy, you are human. Whoever you know that's going through something, you are human. We are all human, and we can't tease our various ailments, our various problems with accepting one another. We can't tease it out because we're all members of the human family. So thank you for saying that, my baby, because I have an autistic son. I know, and I'm still working with him. And he is human, and he is Black, and he is your brother.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yes.
Any
Okay,
other-
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say, no, not going to say anything else. I think Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a better home. Do you hear me, Jerry? Do you hear me, young people? Just get the words of that song and make it, and if not make it, write your own song that is your battle cry, and go. Take your people with you. And when you go and take people with you and not ailments, when you go and take people with you, you will meet all of your brothers and sisters.
Well,
And that's what Sharon has been talking
right,
about.
right. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, yes. Ooh,
Beautiful.
yes.
We didn't know we were gonna have church this afternoon.
We just did. We just did.
But that's what we did. That's what we
Yeah,
do.
but you know, and that's what Sharon, so look, let me just say this.
Yes.
Let me just say this,
baby.
that the one thing that you have to, that I have to know is that it takes a lot of effort to be both evil and good, to be partly evil and partly good. But when you want to go all the way to love or all the way to evil, you have said, I'm going to work. Evil takes time. You got to convince yourself
Right.
that the folks you stole from home, the folks that founded civilization, put them on boats, brought them here, locked them down, and told them they were evil, told them they were beasts. You had to work hard to get to that. You don't get off of your evil.
Right.
And if you are at a table at Thanksgiving, you don't think that somebody's there that's Black or white, Asian, that don't have bigotry in them, you have sold yourself a lollipop that's poison. So I'm gonna go.
Don't go on, woman. Love you. But
Thank you.
I will ask if there are any other comments, questions. It's a full conversation this afternoon. Yeah.
Jola, can I say one more thing?
Sure, of course.
Well, yeah, it's a full conversation and it was church. And that's what you do. That you made that happen by pulling
That's
this
right.
conversation together.
That's right.
And I think perhaps George Mason had no idea what they were bringing to themselves. And I hope they will have the wisdom to see the transformation that you are absolutely committed to. You could have used your resources in 1,001 other ways.
Right.
A
Thank you.
1,001, but this is what you chose to have happen. So I'm proud, Jola. I give so much respect and honor to the many choices you have made. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Amen. Thank you.
you. Thank you. Well, now I'm full. Okay. So Sharon, like I said, you are, my sister girl, ride or die.
That's right.
Always, always, always a pleasure to be in your company. Many thanks to George Mason School of Theater, the Mason Players, Players for Change, the Friends of Theater, and CBPA's Office of Marketing and Communication for their support in publicizing this event and hooking us all up with registration links and the whole thing. A special shout out to our program manager, Nick Horner, who's always working behind the scenes to keep us on track. And all of our discussions, including this one, is recorded and will be on our website, and that should be in the chat momentarily. But I hope you can join us next month for the conversation with Lisa Crone, who is, well, she's been doing it for a long time too. Tony Award winning artist, creator of Well, 2.5 Minute Ride, Fun House, wrote the lyrics and book for that song, that musical, and hope you will join us then. Again, eternal thanks, Sharon, for being with us today. Beyond a pleasure. Thank you all for attending. Be well, be safe, and whenever possible, be joyous. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.